And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us, and one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it. And that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon Wright. Tonight we're going to be joined by my guests, Tyler and Casey. They both want to come on here tonight and share some of their experiences that they've had with some of these supposed Sasquatch incidents along the Oregon-Washington area and also down in Tennessee. I'm definitely looking forward to getting them on here and talking with them tonight. Before we bring them on, if you'd like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, you can send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. There you can send me a message. Either way works for me. Just make sure you get a hold of me. We'll get you scheduled for a future episode. If you want to help the podcast out, continue to share it around. Word of mouth is the best way to help it grow. If you'd like to leave a 5-star review, that helps with rankings. If you want to write a review, I'll make sure to read it and give you a shout out on one of the upcoming episodes for anyone that does. Be sure to follow on all of the social medias. And if you're interested in the Patreon, that is available as well for ad-free content, early access to episodes, and some bonus stuff as well. I think now we're going to go ahead and bring Tyler and Casey on. Hope you guys enjoy it. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take this time to welcome my guests tonight, Tyler and Casey. Thanks for coming on here and talking with me.
No problem.
Hey, man, thanks for having us on.
Yeah. A little bit about yourselves.
Yeah, my name is Tyler. I'm 35 years old and born and raised in the Pacific Northwest outside of Portland, Oregon area. Not in Portland. Let's see, I have hardly any background in, if like hardly zero to none actually, in Sasquatch or Bigfoot or cryptids or anything like that. I grew up here. We've always had the lore of Sasquatch in the Pacific Northwest. It's just kind of been part of the tradition here and culture. But I've always just kind of I've always believed in the idea of it, but it's always just kind of been like a one singular animal roaming the forest and showing up all over the place and scaring people out of the forest type of deal. And I didn't really know too much about it at all. And then I got introduced into the subject and have had my world opened up. So it's been a pretty interesting ride so far. Yeah.
Once you kind of get into this sort of eye-opening world, I guess it is kind of what happens with me. You just start digging into it, and the more you dig, you're like, oh, this can't be real. This can't be real. And you keep hearing more stories and more encounters, and you're just like, well, somebody's got to be seeing something. So,
yeah, that's exactly it, and that's exactly how it started for me, man. It actually really started with I started out listening to a podcast called Sasquatch Chronicles.
mm-hmm.
And in the beginning of that episode of that, or beginning episodes of that podcast, they teach you a lot of sciencey stuff. You learn about Dr. Jeff Meldrum and John Bindernagel, just all the main academia that's been a part of the subject that really lends credence to the subject. And I started getting into that, and there's an episode on there where it's all reported Sasquatch calls, and I had heard that and loved the episode. And so I had downloaded it, and it was not normal for myself to head out to the forest and just hang out there for a while, a few days, whatever. Um, and I decided to do that one day. And I had grabbed, I had my podcast that I was listening to, Sasquatch Chronicles, and I had decided to download this episode and in hopes of doing a call blast is what they call it. So basically, you take audio sample and you play it over a loudspeaker as loud as it can go, and the idea is to get it over across expanse and hopefully get a response back from it. And so I had found this little dead end cat road, just a road cut in the middle of the hill. One side of it was an incline, the other side of the road was a decline. And I had found a dead end one, and I backed up into it. And there was and I'd sat in my car. It was probably about 10 minutes. I was sitting there, 15 minutes or so, just hanging out. At this point, I wasn't listening to the podcast. It was silence. I was resetting. And I decided to put on the podcast and do a call blast. So I had rolled down. I was in a Subaru Outback at the time, so I had rolled down all four windows, passenger and driver's side, front and back, and then I had my moonroof open, and I blasted this call. It's you can find it today. It's been titled the Missouri Screamer, but it was frightening. I mean, the sound of it was intense. So I had blasted it, and I had my ears plugged, and right towards the end of the call, the recording, I had turned the volume all the way down and listened, because that's what I was instructed to do. That's what I was told. That's just what I learned. And within probably maybe 1 second, I'm guessing, maybe 2 seconds, off to my left, and it sounded super far away. I don't know exact distance of it, but it was far enough to where I could tell it was a ways away, but it was still loud. And it sounded almost like a dog howl, but it wasn't I don't think it was a dog. In the moment, I thought it was a dog, but I don't think that to this day. But anyways, I had heard this call, and thinking back on it, it was interesting because I remember a flux at the end of the call, and it was like a whoa at the very end, like the vocals went up and flex in pitch and be right before it dropped. And it took me a second to register that I'd heard something. But when I did, I instantly thought, oh man, there's a dog over there. So that means there's someone over there. And then milliseconds after I had that thought process, I felt this feeling of impending doom. Like I was about to die. I don't know how else to describe it. Followed by like two little clicks. I heard two little clicks, and then a huge collision style boom on the back passenger side of my vehicle. I'm guessing so much so that my whole car started rocking back and forth. The leaf springs. I don't know anything about vehicles, but I've been told by multiple people that I've told this story to that I guess do know stuff about cars. It sounded, I guess to them, it sounded like my leaf springs were bottoming out, whatever that means, because it was like a metal on metal grinding because it was my car was flexing so much. And I remember it shook about 3 or 4 times before it settled, and I freaked out really bad. I turned my car on and I got out of Dodge real fast. I made it down to highway 224, or I'm sorry, 212. Or no, yeah, I was correct the first time. Highway 224, and off the main or onto the main from the side road, and I had sped my way down and found the first little pullout area, and got out, assessed the situation, reset, and I took myself to go around the vehicle to see how much damage there was. When the impact happened, it sounded like either a boulder or a log had collided with my vehicle. It was intense. I honestly expected windows to be blown out or something like that, but When I got to the side of my vehicle, there was no damage. The windows were all intact. There was no scratches, no marks, no dings, no dents, no nothing in that area. Um, and so I was just flabbergasted. I didn't know what to think. I just got back in my car and started heading back down into town. And I had anticipated on staying up there for at least a night. Um, uh, and so for me to just like take off out of that spot, because I there was no way I was going back into the forest that day, and I didn't go back into the forest for another few probably a month or so. Uh, and then my friend, well, real quick, I've talked in talking to other researchers and listening to other people's stories about their vehicles being, well, no other word to use it, but assaulted.
Mm-hmm.
It's not uncommon for someone's car to be wrapped on, knocked, punched, whatever, and there's no damage. And so and that I don't know what to think about that, but I've heard a theory that on the Subarus they have that black composite bar on the top, or for the rack mounting system.
Yeah.
And uh, the theory goes that the Sasquatch was coming by. The Missouri Screamer recording is actually like a defensive primate call, like "Get out of my area! What are you doing in here?" Which would explain why on the left side of my vehicle I heard like a what I know now is like a high pitched Ohio-ish howl, and then to my right it was and I don't know this to be a fact. I'm just going off of what my mind's eye sees. Coming down off the incline onto the road I was on, and the road was about 30 feet, 40 feet wide at max. So it's not some giant road. Uh, but I think it had kicked a couple pebbles on its way to my vehicle. Uh, and the pebbles hit my rims. And then milliseconds after I heard the click, click, I heard that and felt, more so heard than felt, that. And and I think what happened, it makes sense. Other people have said this. It hit that bar on the top. The bar is strapped into the chassis and the structure of the vehicle, so that would explain why the whole vehicle would be moving that way and why there was no damage. But that's all, a guess. I don't know that to be a fact, but that was the very first entering encounter, I guess you could say, the very first ever situation that happened, and it shook me. It scared me out of the woods. I've always used the woods as like my church, my reset, my whatever you want to call it, whatever people, whatever it just helped me reset completely. Get rid of the city noise and all that stuff. And my friend Alex had contacted me. He's one of my buddies I've known from fishing and hunting and stuff. He had invited me to go out and check out this new area to scout out for deer hunting, and I had hesitantly agreed to go with him, but I told him like this is right up in the same area where I had just got my vehicle assaulted, attacked, whatever, and I'm not interested in going up there without crazy amounts of firepower. So we went up there with guns and all that stuff, and that helped ease me into getting more comfortable back into the forest. And it took me up until it was August of 2019. I was hanging out in the Mountain National Forest. I had gone up to this lake that I grew up going to. My dad and brother are avid fishermen, and I grew up with them floating it and fishing for trout and all this bluegill, all sorts of fish. And so I had gone up there, and I had gone up right after work, and I was working for a staffing agency at that point, who had me at the town at the bottom of the mountain that I was wanting to camp out at. And my manager and his wife lived at the bottom of that mountain. So I'd asked him, I was like, "Hey man, after work I'm going up here. If you and the lady want to head up, you can come on up, and if come join and camp out." And he said that if we end up if we're gonna end up coming out tonight, then you'll see us, and if not, then you won't see us type of deal. So I went up there, and it was about 10:30 at night that I realized no one was there, about 10:25 ish. And I'm hanging out at the fire. I got a fire going. I did not have my tent set up because I was missing a few key components. I didn't know it at the time. So I was car camping. But the way the road is, it's a one-way road in and out. There's no other way, no other roads around. And you come up, and then there's some boulders off to the left in the lake, probably 15 feet to 25 feet from the boulders. And then surrounding the lake is it's a bowl of forest. Um, and so I'm sitting at the fire. The lake's probably about 8 to 10 feet in front of me. And the tree line's about 15 to 20 to the left, to the right, and then the road's right behind me. And I'm hanging out. It's 10:30 at night, August, dark night or dark skies, cloud cover over the moon, and some stars, but some stars were still out. But up in the forest, for anyone who knows, that makes for an extremely dark night. And so I had my fire going. So all my visuals were aided by my firelight. And I'm hanging out, listening to Sasquatch Chronicles. I downloaded it, brand new into it. Obviously, just a couple months into listening. I had my 30-06 long rifle on the right hand side, laying on a rock, and my 9mm on my left. And I'm pointing these out for a reason. I'm not one of those guys. And my phone on my left, on my right leg, playing a podcast. And I'm sitting in front of the fire, facing the lake, and I feel all of a sudden on my to the left, I feel like someone was looking at me. Something's looking at me, like my bubble was burst. So I kind of take a look to my over my left hand shoulder, and standing there behind a tree, it was peeking at me from behind a tree, and it was about my height. It wasn't some giant Herkin thing. There was no smell or sound or anything else involved. But standing there is a Sasquatch looking at me from behind a tree, and I think it was a juvenile to this day. It was either a juvenile or a female squatted down because, like I said, its height looked to be about mine. It wasn't some giant thing. And I froze stiff. Obviously, I didn't. The idea of Sasquatch had been opening up to me at this point, like it, as a real entity, a real being. Sorry, not an entity, a real being. But it was obviously still shock and awe. And the number one thing I remember most about it is its lips were pursed, like it was about to whistle at me. Its eyes were small and shrunken. They're black. They were super dark. They were dark, dark. Um, and I'm seeing all this from an illuminated fire, or firelight. So it's illuminated from the firelight. So it's got like a reddish glow to it. So I still to this day can't tell you an honest hair color. But it looked to be like a darker brown, a darker red, maybe, or yeah. So it was interesting. And I'm standing there, or I'm sitting. It's standing there, and my jaw is just open. And I'm focusing on its eyes, its lips, its forehead. Had like pretty apish like creases in the upper forehead area, and around the eyes. Down below the eyes, right at like right at the lower eye bone, right where it starts. It started to smooth out, kind of like our skin is, and into the cheeks that were smooth. So it was. I liken it to like the original Planet of the Apes style look, like not quite exactly, but close. And it had brush obstructing about its belly button level, approximately down. So I wasn't able to see its legs or its feet or anything like that. I could see its elbow, and its elbow looked like it would have been where our forearm is, the middle of our forearm is. So I took that as extremely long arms. But and the other thing I remember most about it is its silhouette, because its silhouette was darker than the night. So it was in the middle of trees, and I had the firelight going. It was in the middle of the trees, and I had the firelight going, But because of the tree canopy, within 2 to 3 feet, once you get in past the tree, it starts to get super dark. And so it was pitch black in the forest itself. And I remember seeing the outline of its body away from the tree, leaning out from the tree, like it made it stick out like a sore thumb in the darkness. It was very, very, very vivid. I can still I can see it right now. And I sat there and freaked out. And then it lasted for about I've been saying about 4 seconds, but give or take, probably more take away. But if I'm being more realistic, it probably lasted for about 2 seconds. I was just in such a state of shock. I still don't know how long to this day it lasted, but it wasn't very long at all. Um, uh, so I'm sitting there and I'm freaking out, and I get it in my head that I need to pull. I need to pull some sort of light out to try to illuminate this thing to make sure I'm seeing what I'm actually seeing. I still don't believe it, even though what I'm seeing, it looked like a Muppet standing there, looking at me. I still need clarification. So I decided to pull my phone camera light out. Not even, I should have pulled obviously thinking back, should have pulled my camera out. But I pulled my LED light out. I scrolled down my page and went to go hit the button. I pressed the button, and I'm not looking at my phone this entire time. I don't know if it's on or not. And with the idea of illuminating it, I go to lift my phone up off my leg, and the second I even twitch a muscle in my arm, this I think still to this day a Sasquatch disappeared back behind the tree so fast it was just like and just gone. And I just sat there with my jaw on the ground, not knowing what to do, too scared to move anywhere or look around or do anything. And I sat there for a couple. I sat there for a couple minutes, but I didn't really want to go anywhere or do anything. I was so scared, man. And I finally decided that I needed to get up and go get in my car. So I did that. And I have pretty bad insomnia, and it still blows me away to this day. But as soon as I got in my car, I locked the doors and I laid down, got my sleeping bag. I laid down and put my head down, expecting to just lay awake, thinking about this monster that I just saw for forever. And I instantly went to sleep, man. It was weird, the weirdest thing ever. I just passed out. I woke up in the morning and I got out of my car and I looked around and I went back to the tree where I was at. I went to go assess to see if I could smell anything or see if anything was off or anything like that. And I obviously, I didn't see anything. If I'm sure there was footprints even I could have looked for, but I just didn't know at that time. I didn't know anything like that. And on the way up to the mountain, I had passed Cliff Barrickman's North American Bigfoot Center. He had just established it. And on the way down from the mountain, I decided to stop in there to talk to him, to tell him about everything because I needed to talk to somebody about this. I didn't really know who to talk to. And I felt like at that point I'd seen a couple episodes of Finding Bigfoot, but I wasn't a fan. I didn't really know who he was. I just knew that there was a Bigfoot museum. And so I started heading my way there. I get there and I walk in and I start talking with Cliff and I tell him the story. And he stands there listening to me. And after I got done telling my story, he told me that there was history of sighting reports in that area, including and so much so that this area where I was in is actually one of the museum's research areas. And so that if I saw what I think I saw, then I probably did see it. And it just opened up my eyes, man. And for anyone who's listening, if you get a chance, it's in Boring, Oregon. You should go check it out. It's a science museum, and it's like it's so intricate and so there's so much to it. It's you can't deny, and it completely opened up my world, man. And it brought me down the rabbit hole, 100%. I've heard many times when people have an experience, it either scares them away or they dive head first. and I'm definitely dove headfirst. So that's kind of what started my journey, man. I started doing a podcast research deal off of that a couple months after my encounter, and had started recruiting a couple of my friends, man, to be my research team members. But more so, more than anything, more in research, I want these guys to get encounters and stuff, and kind of to prove to them, like, I saw this. You believe me now, type of thing. So, but yeah, that's kind of where what brought me to this whole subject. So yeah.
That's a lot of stuff to bring you over to the side. Like usually people have something happen to them. They don't really ever happen to anything again. So the fact that you had a couple things happen, that's kind of cool. At least cool to
Yeah.
me. Maybe some people out there listening, like, I don't want any experiences. I mean,
Some people don't.
yeah. Casey, what about you? What brought you into this whole realm?
All right. So I grew up in Tennessee and moved out to the Pacific Northwest when I was 20, and currently now back in Tennessee. My main stuff happened here in Tennessee when I was a kid with my whole family, actually, and then I had more stuff happen out in Oregon. So I'll kind of give you a condensed version or try. I'll give as much details as I can, but so basically, my family and I, it was my 4 adults and 6 kids, counting myself. I had my sister and my 4 cousins. We went out to this one spot one night. And as with everything here in the South, everything's got a lore or some sort of ghost story or haunt or something. And so what my family did during the summer and fall, we'd drive around and go, look at stuff and try to scare stuff and whatnot. But this one particular area was kind of known for having like some weird things happen. And in specific, they said that if you go into this spot, it's in a holler, so it's like dark in the daytime, 1 lane road, no lights at all on this whole strip. One end of the road goes into a giant cow farm. It's probably a couple 100 acres and stuff. So, and there's like a little pull off. It's all public land. And the story is you go down there and you turn off your lights. And if you just wait around, a pair of red glowing eyes will appear. And, no, I don't know anything happens. They just know that much. That was the lore, that just a pair of red eyes will pop up and appear. And this is what my dad told us, because he grew up in the area too. And this night they were just going to show us that it was actually just a spot where people go and hang out and party or just camp or whatever. Or, that's what all, they did growing up. And so we get a fire going. We get there around dusk and get a fire going. And we're roasting hot dogs and marshmallows and just hanging out. And not soon after we got there and started getting the fire going, we kept smelling the strong, strong odor of, it was a mix of wet dog, skunk, and then just something rotting. Like, I don't know if you're a hunter or been out in the woods and come up on like a rotting animal or a kill or something, but just really, really foul. But it was a mixture of those 3 smells specifically, and it would get really, really strong and then fade off. And so we just kind of thought, skunk, whatever, no big deal. But the whole night it kept getting stronger and then fade away and stronger and fade away, and culminating to this one point where my dad all of a sudden just kind of jumps up and gets all nervous and grabs the shotgun out of the truck, because we're in the South at that time. Everyone's got a shotgun in the truck. And so he gets it out and just kind of has it there because he's got all his kids around, and he didn't know if someone was messing with us or what. So he was just kind of being protective. And we kind of get a little settled down, and my sister, we had like one of those, I don't know what kind of gas lantern, but the old school lanterns that had the burners on, you light them up. And she went to go sit beside my dad and put her hand right on top of this lantern and screamed like really, really loud. And this, we were little kids. She was, I think it was happened when I was like 9 or 10. So around 89, 90, I think. And so she screams really, really loud, and we all go to take care of her. 'Cause she's kind of young, and we, kind of diffuses the situation. And so we kind of get settled. And then not long after that, we hear this crazy noise come from just outside of the firelight that kind of sounded like a howl. And that scared the bejesus out of everybody. We all all us kids ran and jumped in the truck, in the back of the truck. All the adults ran in the cab of the truck. And as we were leaving, I just remember my dad and uncle stopping, and then, being like, we can't just go leave the fire. We have to go back. So they stop. We're all freaking out because we want them to go. But they stop. They pour all the sodas, all the ice, everything on the fire to snuff it out. And then, we take out out of there. And this is a 1-lane road. If someone is coming down the road, you're not, it's going to be very, very extremely hard, if impossible, for 2 cars to pass. And given that description for a reason. But so we're coming up, and like I said, we're in a holler. And I did this thing when we would drive around in the country, sitting in the back of the truck, where I would just click a flashlight on and off, and I wouldn't strobe it, but I would just kind of click it on and click it off. Just, I don't know. It was just something I did. And so we're driving out of there, and all of a sudden my dad just punches the gas. And we all kind of thought he was just trying to goof and, be like, oh, hang on, guys. And at that same time he punched the gas, I happened to click on the flashlight and illuminated this giant 8-foot tall being take this 1-lane road in one step. And what I remember is it was white, but not like a popping white. And, because this is all dark. So even a light gray is going to illuminate very brightly in a pitch dark. I just remember it being very white and very light. And got a perfect side view of it, arms swinging, legs moving, definitely bipedal. And it took this 1-lane road in one step. Like, it started out on one side of the ditch. One step was middle of the road. The second step, it was already on the other side of the road. And like I said, I saw arms swinging, and it was definitely like the biggest animal, anything I've ever seen. And seemed like it was forever, but we're driving away, but I saw it. And how I remember how I came up with 8 feet was, as an adult now, I'm almost 6'3", and I always remember its hip and midsection came up to the exact height of the truck bed, because this was very, very close to the truck. Like, if it had taken a step sooner, it would have ran into the truck. And given where I was sitting in the back of the truck, if I'd have looked left, I probably would have been looking right at it, or might have even had my face in its chest or stomach or whatever. But because it was very, very close to the truck, and it was like the moment we passed, it was taking the step. So it was very, very close. And we drive off, and we get to where the road stops, and there's a big dairy farm. And I remember looking up and seeing my dad at the front of the truck with his hands on his knees, kind of bent over, and my uncle was talking to him and stuff. And I couldn't hear him, but I just remember that scene. And later on, actually, about a little over a year ago, I talked to my uncle and I revisited it, because I go around and I was trying to talk to other family members, being an adult, and being like, what do you remember of this event? And almost everyone that was there, except for me, my sister, one of my cousins, and the uncle I was just talking about, they all say, oh, I don't know what I saw. Because I always wondered what the adults saw in the front of the truck, because it had to have been right there on the side of the road when we were coming up the hill. And, the lights had to have hit it. So I asked him what he saw. And in that discussion, he told me that a lot of things that I didn't remember actually, or don't or didn't recall. But he was saying, so backing up where my dad got the shotgun out of the truck right before that event, my dad, I guess, saw something, like, because we were right next to a creek, and he saw something right next to the creek and could see a silhouette, couldn't make out what it was. And he was telling my uncle, like, hey, what do you see that? What is that? And he said, yeah, I see that. And they were hearing grunts and growls coming from that area. And I guess he said they were it was throwing rocks and dirt at us. And that's what prompted my dad to get the shotgun out of the truck. And and then as we were leaving, he was riding shotgun in the front, and as we were leaving, he was watching this one. Well, they said so. My dad always said there were two of them, but I only ever saw the one. And my uncle backed this statement up in this interview that I had with him, where he said, "Yeah, there were two of them, and they were running, keeping up with the truck, and basically pacing us out of that area." And he said one was walking, and he said one was swinging from the trees. And he said he remembered because he saw it grab a branch, and the branch broke, and he watched it hit the ground. And they were scared that those two beings were going to jump in the back of the truck and grab us kids. That's what they thought it was trying to do. So that's why they were scared and trying to get out of there. And I talked to my sister, and she doesn't like to talk about it. She said it scares her, and so she doesn't even like to bring up the subject, or she said she doesn't even like to drive by that road, and or anything. So, and I was like, well, I got to know, like, just tell me about it. And so she remembers. She doesn't remember things getting thrown at us, but she remembers my other cousins throwing rocks and stuff at it and saying that they had scared it off. And then that kind of triggered the memory of, like, okay, I remember that. And just thinking that they were bullcrapping, trying to be tough and be like, yeah, we scared whoever that was away. And so I gave no credit or creed or anything to that. And so all that was all happened that night. The next day we went right back out there because we were like, let's see if anyone was out there, or see if we can figure this out. Or, if someone was out there, we can sort it out. Or at the very least, we're just going to go hike that area. So we go there, and, we're kind of on edge a little bit. This is daytime. And they go by the creek. My dad, my uncle, and my cousins, they went by the creek to see if there were any footprints, and they said they found some really large footprints. Again, I thought they were bull crapping, so I didn't even go near the creek, which I kicked myself for not going. But they went down there and saw giant footprints, and they were like, yeah, someone was definitely over here, blah blah blah, okay. And as we were going to hit on this trail, at that time, there were 3 giant ditches that were dug out to keep people from driving back off in there. Because this is like public land, but they didn't want people driving, their vehicles all back there and stuff. And so these are probably about 5 or 6 foot ditches that were, I don't know, probably about 15 or 20 feet long. Or I might be, I'm terrible at distance, but they were large ditches with big mounds, the dirt on top of the ditches to create berms. And so we're jumping over these berms, and on the third one we look down, and there's a deer in there with its head completely twisted around, like its head looking looking where it wouldn't be normally. It was popped, it was broken. And I just remember making the statement of, like, wow, this deer kind of biffed it. He ate it. He missed the jump and ate it into the ditch. And it had, like, this back end kind of chewed on and was definitely ate on down by its leg and its haunches. And then again, later as an adult, piecing this together, I was like, wait a minute, deer don't dive headfirst into stuff. At the most, they might break their legs or something, but they don't just dive headfirst in it. and its head was definitely like broken, like something had twisted and popped its neck. So my theory is, with us being there, it came back to, maybe it was maybe hungry and was coming back for that deer, and then here we all are sitting around, kind of basically blocking it from being able to go get food. And with my sister yelling, it might have, kind of put it off a guard because of the screams that they do and such. And instead of kind of roaring or screaming at us, it just kind of made this howl sound. Years later, I get a message on Facebook Messenger, and it just says, "What does this sound like?" And it's from my cousin. So I listened to it, and it's a game cam footage from around this area of a wildcat, or we call them wildcats. They're bobcats or mountain lions. And it says mountain lion or bobcat mating call. And it sounded almost identical to the sound that we heard. I mean, almost identical. And so I think it was trying to make it was mimicking a cat sound to get us out of there, to scare us out of there, which it totally worked, and it did. And yeah, that's kind of the Tennessee experience. And then years later, being out in the Pacific Northwest, I got into mushroom hunting and foraging. And so I was always out. When I moved to Oregon, I was always out there on Mount Hood. And this one time, let's see what happened first. I think the sound happened first. So we were hunting for morels with my other group of friends, or my friend and his wife and their dogs. And we were on the morels. They were popping, man. It was a great season. And we were on them, and we were kind of, our thing was we kind of split up and come back and in the same basic area. And so we had done that. And my friend's wife had found a half a deer shed. So we were she came back, we were talking about that. And as we're talking, over to my right, over the trail into the wood line, we hear just like this kind of whoop whoop. I mean, not exactly like that, but kind of a similar sound. And I thought it was my friend, and I was like, "Oh man, he's on him." And about 15 yards directly behind me, he pipes up and says, "Guys, that wasn't me." And so we're just like, "Oh, holy shit, man, what was that?" And we're kind of sat puzzled for a minute. And I was like, "Okay, but we all heard that, right?" And we're like, "Yeah." So the dogs aren't freaking out. So we were like, "Okay, well, we're on the mushrooms. Let's just still go for them." And so we just kind of kept foraging and found, and that was kind of the weird sound that we heard there. And in that same area, I think later that season, or maybe possibly the next season, I'd have to look at the date on the picture, but we were kind of in that same area, foraging again. And I was walking around looking, and I just happened to kind of stop and look, and I saw a giant footprint where I was like, and I got bummed because I was like, "Oh man, someone's already been in our area, getting the mushrooms. Dang it." And then I'm staring and looking at it, and it looks like a giant barefoot footprint. And I'm like, "Wait a minute." And then it all starts clicking, and I'm a size 12, and I put my shoe beside it, and it's maybe a half inch larger than my shoe, and definitely a lot wider, but as clear as day, it looks like a barefoot footprint right in the dirt. And so I call my friends over, the same friends that we heard the whoop with. And I was like, "You guys, am I tripping here, or am I looking at what I think I'm looking at?" And we were all just kind of like, we're just dumbfounded, like, wow, we're on top of the mountain. We're like just a few thousand feet from the summit, like, no, your biggest hippie is not going to be running around this area barefoot because it's just too dangerous. And so I got some pictures of it and was like, wow, that was kind of a trip. And following year in the same area, doing the same thing. I was with my dog, just a solo trip. And I found another smaller print that was maybe the size of my hand, but kind of looks like a footprint, definitely odd. And yeah, those are kind of the things that happened out there in the Pacific Northwest. And but ever since that first experience, it scared a lot of people. You know, my family members, they used to go. My uncle even said that they used to go out in the woods and exploring a lot because there's tons of caves down here. Everyone's into hunting and all that stuff, and they used to do all that. And since that event, he said that just stopped them right dead in their tracks. They stopped hunting, they stopped exploring, they stopped doing anything. But for me, it never scared me. I was just kind of like, okay, well, this is just something else that's out in the woods to be aware of. And I didn't have a place for my brain in it, but I was just kind of like, I know what I saw, and that was definitely real. And so they're definitely out there. And then, years later, being out in the Pacific Northwest, it's a big part of the culture out there. And I was like, oh yeah, totally. It was just like a family thing, that story that we all had from back here. And I shared that with my friend's wife, who was really into the subject. And she got me listening to Sasquatch Chronicles, and then I think met Tyler on another forum with Sasquatch and said, hey, this guy's putting together a podcast. You should get with him and tell him your story. And so we did, and just totally sparked a friendship because we were kind of in a lot of the similar stuff. And so I was like, yeah, dude. And just kind of became fast friends, and that spawned our friendship. And those are kind of my experiences to date with it so far.
How long you guys been doing the podcast?
2019.
Nice.
So it's about 4 years. Yeah, 4 or 5 years now, I think.
Now, that was right around the time where I started doing or started listening into stuff for podcasting. But now it sounds like you guys had some interesting experiences for sure. Now,
Yeah.
you guys are fans of Sasquatch Chronicles. I was actually on an episode recently of his show. But
Cool.
there is he always asks the audience, I'll pull a Wes here. What do you guys think they are?
Yeah, that's good. Me personally, I honestly believe that they're just part of the family branch, or not family branch, Paranthropus. Like if anyone knows Lucy, Lucy was a Paranthropus, and I believe that there's so I work at the North American Bigfoot Center, and in the back we have a display, and it's an Australopithecus is what I'm thinking of. Or no, not Austro. I'm sorry. That's completely wrong.
Gigantopithecus.
Yes. Australopithecus is correct, and that is the family branch of what Lucy belongs to.
Okay.
And Paranthropus is in that family genome, and that is what I believe the Sasquatch species is. If you look at just history and of what we found scientifically with our ancestors, it fits the niche. It fits completely, 100%. And all of our research that we've done, we found footprints. Me and Casey this last summer just found a possible handprint in the Mountain National Forest. We've heard lots of noises, experienced lots of things. It all leads to just a physical flesh and blood animal. It's in my opinion that if they were, supernatural of any sort, they wouldn't be going through people's garbage cans or leaving piles of poop on the ground, or leaving footprints or handprints or hair samples or whatever. There's just so many physical things to be found with this subject. So that leads me to believe that they're just no different than a bear or cougar.
How do you explain some of the strange activity that people encounter with them, though? Like the footprints just end, they seem to go behind a tree and they're just gone. Something that's 10 foot
Mhm.
tall, they just disappear. There's a lot of weird stuff that comes with the like Sasquatch lore and stuff that you hear.
So personally, I think with that, I think they tend to jump up into the trees and go into the trees. I got nothing to base that on other than I was thinking how everyone describes their giant traps and the long arms and such like that. And I tend to, not really equating them to monkeys or anything. However, just kind of being monkey like in that, hey, you got long arms, you got big traps. I could probably get around up in the trees as quick as I can get around on foot, and or maybe even faster, and what's the quickest way to ditch anything chasing you or to disappear is just to go up. Because us as humans, as being primitive, even going back to the primitive and Cro-Magnon man, we're as trained being hunters, we're looking on the horizon and looking for movement. We're not necessarily looking up or anything like that. Um, that's just my own opinion of the foot tracks disappearing. And again, I agree with Tyler. I kind of think it's definitely a physical being. However, I don't know. I don't know how to explain the other weirdness that comes along with that.
The woo woo side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
well,
I was gonna say one time, actually, one of the second or third time of hanging out with Tyler and going up to this one spot that we go to. We were out doing some call blasting and just kind of, it's a beautiful spot in general. So when the sun was going down, I think we were going up there to cast something or cast a possible track behind one of our research camps that we had. And, we were coming off, we are like, let's just stop and check it out. It's a beautiful area and overlooking a big valley. And if you look to the left, you can see Mount St. Helens and Mount Adams and Mount Rainier. It's pretty wild spot, real special. And so we were kind of doing some call blasting and stuff. And it was me, Tyler, and was it your cousin or other buddy?
my buddy Ben.
Yeah, your buddy Ben. And we were standing there and we were all just kind of, in the moment of ourselves. We're kind of a little bit apart from each other. And suddenly I just became frozen. Like I couldn't move. I couldn't walk. I was standing, but I was like frozen in place. And cause I was about to go to Tyler, or what happened was I was walking towards Tyler and I thought I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. So I stopped and looked and I was just kind of standing there for a minute. And then the way I describe it is, how like when we were all kids playing hide and seek and you're in the shadow and you're not sure if you were seen or not. So you kind of take a sidestep to see if you were seen. That's kind of what happened. And what I thought I was looking at a tree, like the whole tree moved, like took a sidestep. And I was like, okay. So I'm kind of just staring at it, trying to figure out if that's what I saw or not. And then that's, in those moments, that's when all of a sudden I just became like frozen and locked into place. And then just suddenly I felt a big tingling in my head and then all down my back and in my legs. And then I just just tears were I wasn't sad or crying, but just tears were just streaming down my face. And at that time, Tyler comes walking back and he looks at me and he's like, dude, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm not in control of this. I can't move. I was like, I thought I saw a tree move and now I'm just kind of frozen. Like I can talk, but I cannot move from this spot. And he's just kind of like trying to figure out what's going on. Cause like I said, it's like the second or third time we'd hung out or gone out. And so he's trying to figure out if I'm having like an emotional break or, whatever. And so I'm just like, yeah, dude, I'm not sad. I'm not crying. This is just, I don't know what's going on, but this is just happening. And then, so waiting a few minutes and the feeling the tingling kind of goes away and I can move my hands and I'm like, okay, I can step now. And then still kind of standing there because now Tyler's beside me and he's like, dude, I think I just saw something go behind a tree or peek behind a tree. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm looking at. And he says, "No, dude, it's this tree over here." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm looking right at it." And mind you, it's getting dark. You can kind of see some stuff, but the light's fading fast, and so we're kind of looking down, and I don't know which tree he's looking at, and he doesn't know which one I am, and he thinks I'm talking about a different tree. And so I said, "Okay, look, man, on the count of three, I'm going to count to three. And when I say three, let's just both point to the tree that we were talking about." And he's like, "Okay." So I say it, 1, 2, 3. And we both point at the exact same tree, like that one right there. And we kind of look at each other like, okay. And because that was what initiated that whole thing. And so I told him that. And then it just kind of, that's all that accumulated out of that. But there's hard to explain like weirdness like that. Like I don't know where to. I know I experienced it. Tyler witnessed it, but like, where do you put that? you
Yeah.
know?
Well, like me personally, like for that, I obviously that happened a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, I've gotten a chance to hang out while working at the museum and get to learn about that stuff. I truly believe that it's very possible that that was infrasound that got directed at you, Casey.
Sure.
But I still don't know. As far as like the disappearing and stuff, whatnot, uh, you know, people claiming that they see Sasquatch and it just zones out, like it disappeared completely. I don't know about it pixelating out like I've heard people explain. I honestly have no clue what to think about that, but I know like, and a good example for this is the Freeman footage. If you take a look at the Freeman footage, at one point in that frame of videos, the subject completely stops, and that subject is huge. It's about 8 foot. Cliff and the guys just did a bunch of measurements out there, 3D mapping and all that stuff. Um, but it completely it blends in, like it looks like it's just a tree, and you were just watching it move. So I truly believe that, like, and one of my manager has seen one, and when he saw it, he thought it was just a tree stump, and it wasn't until he pointed at it and the hair rose on its arm that he knew that it was a Sasquatch. I've heard stories of hunters, archery hunters, walking through the forest and sitting there, and they sit to eat a sandwich or something like that, and they sit there and watch a stump stand up and walk away. It's just so many different aspects of there's misidentifications, and I believe in a lot of things too, like not to poo poos on anyone's parade or anything like that, but a perfect example is I believe we're talking about it earlier. The Beast of Bray Road is a misidentified Sasquatch. That's what I believe that to be, just from the distance and the description. There's all the surrounding details about it. I was this last summer. I was invited to go to. It's a gathering of, it's an invitation only, of Sasquatch researchers called Beachfoot in Oregon, and there's a guy who runs the North American Wood Ape Conservancy. Or no, it's not NAWAC. I can't remember his company name right now, but a man by the name of Todd Neese gave a speech, and in that speech he talked about watching a National Geographic Channel show about the wild. It was one of those Life Planet uh, episodes about life at night, and the camera guys were talking about how even after they turn off their night vision on the cameras, they can still see all the animals' eyes glowing in the dark, and it's from a refractory that happens in the eyeball. Even though we as humans see pitch black, it's never pitch black out in the wild. There's always some sort of light illumination. There's moon illumination, even if we can't see it. There's star illumination, and if you have a predatoristic eyeball that's got more than 8 layers in it, it's going to absorb all that light, and it's going to almost look like it's glowing back at you. So I personally believe that's how you hear these stories of people seeing these glowing eyes in the woods when there's no, what we see, no apparent light available to create that. So I mean, obviously I don't know everything, but that's from according to what my research has shown. It makes the most sense that uh, you know it's all conventionally scientifically explainable. Um, with the exception of, obviously, like I said, I don't know everything. So then you get into like Ron Moorhead's quantum Bigfoot stuff. And I don't, we don't know, science doesn't know enough about quantum physics to even touch that for me. So I don't have an opinion on that stuff. But uh, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we base our research and our podcast off of, Brandon. It's kind of, uh, we're just citizen scientists, hence the name of my podcast. People who take the research serious, take it in a conventionally scientific method. That way, when and if the species is ever identified and recognized by science, this team, along with many others, Olympic Project, for example, out of Washington State, if we can supply data that's been peer reviewed and all this whatnot, it can aid to that, which is the whole reason we have this podcast. It started out as a storytelling podcast, and I quickly learned that my passion is not in the story so much; it's more in the research. So we kind of just took it more so took that turn into research, and changed, split our podcasts up. All of our storytelling stuff is on Bigfoot and the Citizen Scientist podcast. And all of our YouTube stuff, or I'm sorry, all of our research stuff, videos of us out in the Mountain National Forest, little documentary style stuff is on YouTube at the Squatchologist podcast. And that's how we keep up to date, keep people up to date, and including other researchers and whatnot in this subject. It's we're as much as there's infighting, we all are pretty much one big happy family. Sometimes not happy so much, but
You mentioned the infighting. I've seen that there's quite a bit of drama involved in the whole cryptid community, one way or the other. So I try and just keep my head down. I do what I do, and if I piss people off, I don't really care because it's my show. I do what I want.
Yeah,
I like
and
it.
and with our research too, we definitely try to rationalize what made the sound or what caused something. We're not like, someone who's just like, here's a fart in the woods and is like, oh man, that was him.
That's definitely Bigfoot taking a shit out there.
Yeah, totally. That was it. We definitely try to be like, okay, okay, we see a possible stick structure. Okay, well, let's look at it. Okay, well, the bottom of it's broken out, it's rotted out. Here's the stump. You know what I mean? Like, okay, this fell. And just using that as an example, but
you're not going out there and saying everything is Sasquatch. You're looking for reasons to write it off to scientifically prove that this could be a Sasquatch, because I've said this with people in the paranormal realm too. If you go out ghost hunting, everything's paranormal to you. You're not really doing anything because you automatically are thinking everything's a ghost. Well, that's not how that works.
Right.
Yeah. But no, I get it. I'm glad there's people out there that like that look for the scientific parts of Bigfoot, because I think, like I said a little bit ago, there's these TV shows that go out there and I just shake my head. I don't even watch them anymore because they're just straight up entertainment.
Yeah.
The only TV show, in my opinion, the only TV show worth its salt, worth watching, is Finding Bigfoot, and that's only certain seasons, because after a while, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a TV show. It's made for TV.
Yeah.
So that's why if a good judge of these is if they're finding something, some big find every single episode, that there's something to be concerned about on this show. But again, it's entertainment. So take it for what it is.
I've had people talk about mountain monsters or anything. I was like, that show is not real at all. It is straight up made up just for
those
entertainment
guys are
purpose.
awesome.
It's a funny show, but don't take it seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and we do events, man. Like we got at the end of this month, January 26th and 27th, we're doing Squatch Fest in Longview, Washington. It'll be about a 15 to 2,000 person event. We'll have our booth there. This last spring, me and one of my research partners, my cousin Dustin, went up to the Olympic Peninsula for a week-long vacation. And on the way back down in Greenwater, Washington, we found a slide down a possible Sasquatch slide with two heel impressions in a hillside, along with a possible foot impression across the road from the slide. So we'll have that at the booth displaying that, and along with the possible handprint that Casey and I just found up out in the Mount Hood National Forest. So we always got big things going. We're just always trying to share what we have going on with people. So it's just so exciting. But yeah, man. Yeah.
If you guys come across anything cool, always send it my way, and I'll make sure to check it out. That's the one thing with me is I've always been fascinated with Bigfoot, and even as a kid, the Patterson Gimlin film, I always remember seeing it, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's just a man in a suit." I was like, "It didn't look like a man in a suit to me, even as a kid." So
Yeah.
That's one of the funniest arguments, because if it was a man in the suit, why the man that created that suit should be a billionaire at this point, because
they've never been able to produce it again.
Nope. Nope.
This was back in the 60s. The guy wasn't rich or anything, so the suit was designed, and with modern enhancements and everything, they're like, "Oh, look how it walks," because they stabilized it. So it does walk a little more humanish, but when you stabilize it, you see more muscle definition. So
Well,
they don't.
and if go ahead.
I was like, they're not really making a point to prove that it's fake unless the guy was a straight up just a hairy man walking naked. Like there's no other way of faking it.
Well, there are a lot
this
of up there.
There are what?
I said, well, there are a lot of hippie communes up there. Just joke.
No, it's for me, and what it should be for everyone else is the surrounding circumstances outside of the film. So the film itself obviously is fascinating, but at the end of the day, and if you can compare it to even just like the Freeman film, the Independence Day film, if you look at, and that's all opinionated, I believe that the Independence Day footage is possibly authentic. But you look at them, and a Sasquatch looks like a human in a suit. That's just how they look. That's how they. It's not until you start seeing them, like their footprints, and you really start paying attention to their legs and how they glide versus walk. That's not a glide. It's more of like a slide, the way they move their feet. But surrounding the film, the PG film itself, for it to be an authentic hoax, that would have meant that just nobody cowboys knew about the mid-tarsal break in the foot in morphology, which wasn't even known by ape experts at that time. So it wasn't attributed to the ape species at all whatsoever. And we, to this day, you can look. There's a straight mid-tarsal break in the middle of one of all of them, but the one I'm thinking of, the Patterson Gimlin footprint, the cast of it. So I mean, you literally, and what was it? Les Stroud from Survivor Man spent, was it $10,000 or something like that, $50,000?
Yeah,
trying to reproduce a foot to see if he could trick Dr. Jeff Meldrum, and he still couldn't get Meldrum. So, I mean, there's experts in this field that back this subject. So the fact that people still say that is a hoax is just beyond me to this day. So yeah.
He's one person I actually would love to have on this show, is Les Stroud. I love Survivor Man, not just for the Bigfoot, but like I always watched his show anyways, and then he did Bigfoot. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, man, I mean, that's kind of like what brought us here at this point. Now, Casey's in Tennessee. He's been there for about a year or so. And he's out near where he had his sighting when he was a kid. So he's been kind of doing research out there. we implement like long-term recorders, long duration recorders, what we call them LDRs, and we can record up to like 2 months at a time. We have game cams out there. One of our spots is about 2 miles off the beaten path up at the back of the lake, and we're actually analyzing audio from a 2 month project, audio recording project right now. So we're only about halfway through, and so far it's nothing yet, but probably a little under halfway. But I mean, it's a lot of audio, man. They're 12-hour incremented recording sessions at a time, so day to day. So 12 on and 12 off. But with the game cams, we've gotten deer and elk, bear, rabbit, coyotes. So I mean, and we use the game cams to establish the game, the game trails, because where the game trails are, the predators will be, and Sasquatch is more than likely a predator. The way they hunt, from what we've found, there's stories that we've heard, they're more than likely an extreme predator. They a lot like the cougar, more than likely sit and wait alongside a game trail. There's stories from Native American cultures of elders seeing Sasquatches taking deer and elk, just standing there on the side of standing there like a stump, like I was talking about earlier. And as they pass by them, they chase them down and break their legs. More times than not, if the deer or elk is killed by a Sasquatch, and this is still can be found repetitive to this day, it's the neck is broken right below the what is it, sorry, I'm trying to think right now. It's the neck bone down to the shoulder, so it's like right at the shoulder level is where the break is always, and the back right leg is always, or one of the back legs is always broken, split. So and there's been carcasses that have been found that way, without knife cut on the bones or anything, and without scavenger remains, which is unexplicable. I mean, that's pretty insane. So that kind of lends credence to those ideology, or not ideology, those stories, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling, man. Like,
That's all good.
but yeah.
How do you guys feel about other cryptids?
Definitely super interested in it for sure, man. Because like you said at the beginning, if you got all these people saying they saw something, it's got to be something. It's got to be some kind of backup, experience to it. And just for me personally, because of my experience, like I don't discredit anybody. On the craziest thing somebody said they saw, whether it's in the woods or, even in the paranormal realm or whatever, if they say they saw something, I give it some credit, because, listen to me, I saw a giant 8-foot being walk a 1-lane road and throw stuff at my family. So, that itself, I tell people that and they're just like, okay, sure. Like there's no mistaking that. Yeah, and I've heard people think that like maybe the dogman is a misidentified Sasquatch or a different subspecies of Sasquatch or something. So like I don't know, man. I'm definitely interested in it for sure. Just the whole aspect of everything, just dogman or any kind of creature really, just is like fascinating.
Well, I'll give you a little rundown. Like I said, I'm going to edit this out of my own podcast, but I will give you a little bit of rundown on my run-in with what could have possibly been a dogman. And fair warning that I am a skeptic. So
cool. Even better.
I always look for rational explanations for things, and I try, and for 15 years I've wrote off what happened because in my mind there's no such thing as a friggin' dogman.
Right.
But I cannot explain it.
I mean, honestly, man, like I said earlier, I'm not a big. I don't ixnay people's stories. That's not what I do. I'm not saying anyone and everyone with a dogman story is lying, or they're just saying whatever they, because I honestly believe, well, I want to believe people. Like
Yeah.
that's my main, that's, and so when I hear, but knowing my background, there's no scientific basis that I know of in my mind for it. But I believe your story, dude. So I'm honestly scared shitless right now. Like, it truly, because I've been sitting here going through my mind trying to analyze the situation from what you've described, uh, and I've gone over, the idea that maybe it was a Sasquatch, or if it wasn't a Sasquatch at first, maybe it was, because I believe in other worldly things. I don't think any of it's connected to Sasquatch, but I believe that they're there.
Mhm.
And if it was some sort of, uh, well, to be cliched, there was some sort of demon, and it needed to present itself in my mind. This is where it goes. What better form would be like? Oh, this person finds the unnatural comfortable. So instead of being in my true form, you know, that's reaching to a whole nother level, man. So I don't know. I don't know what to think about that subject. And so you're about 5 hours or so from Michigan, right?
Yeah, I could be honestly about an hour and a half. I can hit the Michigan line.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
I'm in northern Indiana, like north central Indiana. So
Okay. Okay. So I mean, you're close enough. I know most, if not, well, from what little research I've done on it, most of the stories come from that part of the United States.
mhm.
And so it kind of lines up with what you were, or it all lines up. Um, and I don't know though. Yeah, y'all can keep your dog, man. Just keep him over there. Keep him out of my woods. I want to be in my forest every day.
Like I said,
So,
I've never experienced anything like that before, and I've never experienced anything like that afterwards. And I hear people's story. I've had people on my show with dogman encounters, and I've listened to some other stuff with dogman things, and a lot of it doesn't make any sense, like as a physical animal. If that you mentioned demonic, and this is where I'm going to take it, because if you look back at some of these encounters, there's certain things about them that are not natural. Obviously, an upright walking canine is not natural anyways. There's never been anything biologically like that, evolutionary. But people say, and they say the same thing sometimes with Sasquatch, with mind speak. People have said these things will come to their doors or windows and look at them, and it talks to them. It'll say, "Let me in." But it's not speaking to them with its mouth. Like, they hear the voice in their head. If you're an 8 foot tall werewolf looking thing, why would someone have to let you in? Why couldn't you just burst through the door
Yeah.
and eat them? They have to be invited in. That sounds like vampire lore, but that also sounds like demons. Like, you need to invite it in. You can't just come into your house. You have to let it in. And a lot of people always talk about, oh, they see it and they just start peeing on themselves. They're so afraid. This, that, and the thing will like laugh at them. Like, it almost smiles at them, like it enjoys them being terrified. But what feeds on fear? A negative energy.
Humans and
Demonic.
stuff.
Yeah.
So I've always leaned towards, if these things exist, I don't think they're an animal. I think they're an energy of something negative. And even the old, and I don't want to screw up the terminology, but like, they claim that these things used to be like the protectors of the dead. They were the gatekeepers of Hades or something like that. And again, and even like ancient, I don't want to say ancient, but like Native American lore or whatever, some tribes or whatever, they said these things protected the dead. Like, they'd be around like their burial grounds or whatever. They patrol burial grounds for the natives. It's like you mention all the dead things, you mention all the stuff that they do, the fact that they can talk to people in their head, and again, all this sounds it's woo woo shit, but it has more of a demonic essence to it, some more of an evilness to itself, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
concur, man.
I'm not a very spiritual person. Like I'm not religious in any sense, but I don't know. Like I said, there's definitely some weird things that go on, and I'm not one person to ever say I know what the hell's going on because I don't. And if I think anyone says they have all the answers, I typically think they don't because no one has all these answers. You might have opinions or
Right.
ideas, but if everyone had the answers, then they'd be a lot more well known.
Solved.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But no,
Exactly.
that's the reason I did the podcast. Like I told the guy I worked with, and this was a couple of years ago. I was expecting him to either laugh or talk about it, other than he just kind of sat there in silence. I was like, well, he thinks I'm crazy. I was like, but I felt better talking about it. So I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to do the podcast, and I'm just going to give a platform for people to come on and share their experiences. Maybe listen to other people talk about their experiences won't make me feel so bad about my own. And then I was like, maybe it'll help people with theirs too. So helping me and helping them is kind of therapeutic.
Absolutely, man. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
Casey, do you have any questions?
yeah, I was gonna ask. So, like, your coworker that was driving ahead of you, he just kind of shut down, and like, even with you talking to him and asking him about it, he just doesn't say anything about it, or like what he saw or anything.
I don't know like what he thought or what he saw. Like obviously he saw the thing in the road because he had
Hmm.
to swerve to miss it. And then he was behind me. He wasn't out on the ground with me. So I don't know if he actually saw the dog thing itself standing up because he was parked behind me. My vehicle was in front of him. So I don't know what all he saw from that aspect. But I know he saw the mouse. We were standing there talking about the mouse. And I know he saw the first thing in the road because he had to swerve to miss it. And then he was the one that said it didn't have a head, it didn't have arms. Like he saw all that because he literally went off in the grass to avoid it.
Okay.
But no, he didn't want to talk about it. And to be honest, I don't know whatever happened to the guy. Like he went to first shift like maybe a month or two later, and then he ended up getting laid off. And I've never talked to the guy ever since then. So I don't know whatever happened to him. But
And also very exceptionally brave and ballsy of you to turn around and to get out of your truck to be like,
someone said they're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you're very brave." I was like, "Well, I'm freaking stupid."
there's a fine between the two.
I was like, if hindsight's 2020, I was like, yeah, it might be brave to get out and go and investigate, but like now knowing the things that I know and the stories I've heard and stuff like that, I was like, I wouldn't get out because I don't know what this damn thing is gonna do.
Yeah.
I think
No.
that's
Go
where it
ahead.
goes back with the dogman lore too, is though like they say it feeds on fear. And if someone said, well, you didn't show it any fear, you got out and you just stood there and stared at it, you weren't afraid of it. Because I wasn't afraid. The whole time this was going on, I wasn't afraid. I was confused. Like
Sure.
I was more like, what the hell is this? Like I wasn't like, oh my God, I gotta run away. I just was like, is this thing standing up? Like
Yeah.
so no, because the whole time I still thought it was just a big dog. Like that's
Have
it
you
looked like
have you heard any Martin Grove stories or anything of his stuff?
I have, and I would actually like to have him on. Everyone says he's such a nice guy and a sweet guy and awesome guy. So I'd really like to talk to him. But my problem with that is I'm skeptical about it. And
Okay.
I don't want to be confrontational about it, but there's things in that story that don't really.
Doesn't really add up to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's things that I'd have questions about. I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to try and discredit the guy or anything like. I don't want to try and discredit anybody.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're
But
fair.
there's definitely some things that I kind of wonder about, especially the guy that he'd ran into the woods earlier, and then they ended up finding out that that guy died. But
Mm-hmm.
there's no report of anybody ever dying. Like there's no record of that. Someone supposedly like dug into that. I've never done the research, but I've read some stuff where people claiming the things that he'd said were disproven. So I don't know.
Okay. And see, I'm kind of on the other side where I'm like, he's got all these accolades for being a police officer. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
why would
that
you finish that with, you
yeah.
know, but who's to say? I thought it was just pretty wild that he saw both Dogman and Bigfoot at the same time. That's kind of what I was like, what?
Yeah. Like
But
I
it's like,
said, it's definitely I would love to talk to him.
sure.
And I'm not trying to, like I said, say I believe it or I disbelieve it. There's just certain things about it that don't really it makes me wonder, like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I said,
And
I don't know.
yeah. And there's a lot of Dogman stories that come out of the LBL, Land Between the Lakes area, which is about, I want to say about 4 or 5 hours from me, going kind of northwest, actually kind of heading up towards your area, going up toward the Kentucky, Illinois, or I guess Illinois, not Indiana, but Illinois area.
Do
And
you
kind of that.
guys, not to interrupt, but I just was thinking about this. Do you know of any black mountain lions or black panthers or anything jaguars in your guys' area?
Uh,
Uh,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say there's been so they're extremely rare, but I think in the past like 100 years or something, there's been like one or two, but they call them melanistic mountain
Mm.
lions.
We, I say we, I didn't really pay attention to what it was. We were driving back from Florida 2 weeks ago,
Oh,
and
yeah,
and
Florida has the Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
well, we were in, I think it was North Carolina right before we got into Tennessee. I don't remember the highway we were on. I'd have to ask my wife. She saw it because I was driving. On the side of the road was a big black. She said a black panther was dead on the side of the road. I saw something dead, but I couldn't tell what it was. I was driving through the mountains at like 70 miles an hour. I'm not really paying attention to the roadkill, but she swore it looked like a big black cat. And I thought maybe it was a black dog because it was really big. So it wasn't a normal cat. And I
Mm-hmm.
told her, she asked me if they have mountain lions in the area or like black panther. I was like, I don't know, like
Mhm.
the Carolina Panthers is a football team. I was like, maybe they have them. So I Googled it and it says there's no black cats in North
Well,
America.
well, uh, the
Yeah.
TWRA, which is the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency, um, the game wardens they call them here, but the TWRA says officially there are no mountain lions of any type in Tennessee. However, you talk to any hunter or anybody that's lived in this area, and they have seen them. In fact, so I got twin uncles, and one of the twins lives probably about 30 minutes away from me in kind of southern Tennessee, northern Alabama area. And he's got a mountain lion on his property where he was out driving his tractor mowing, and he's got to carry like a 44 Magnum just because there was one that was stalking him once, where he kind of stopped to go pee, and he heard a noise and looked over, and there was one laying in the bushes right next, like not far from him. So he let off a few rounds and watched it run off. You know, like they're definitely here, and I think there
Yeah.
are. Yeah, I
Well,
think
that
there.
that I told her I wanted to turn around if that's what it really was and go throw it on the roof of the van. And but obviously didn't do that. But I wish I
You
would have.
should have.
I really wish I would have, and I would have tried
And
to
then
figure out a way to tie it to the roof of the van, and then be like, "Oh, they don't exist." Plop. Here it is.
There you go.
no,
Yeah.
no, no,
Well,
no. That's just that's how Florida is too. The state of Florida states that there's no black pan or no black cats in the state at all whatsoever. but you can go to YouTube and find videos of them walking on the boardwalks out there. So
Yeah, I don't understand all that, but that was kind of what I was hitting back to is like, if this thing's actually out here and they're denying it's out there, what else is out there that they say doesn't really exist out here?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And with that, you can get into all other things like the Thunderbirds and other giant animals that people see.
I will be having a Thunderbird
Giants.
episode here soon.
Oh, no way. Cool.
Yeah, I have an interview scheduled here in the next couple weeks with someone that saw a Thunderbird out in the Bridgewater Triangle.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and then I
I'm
actually
gonna
have an
listen to
episode.
that one.
I have an episode coming out about giants here soon too. The Lovelock or the giants. in the
Well,
cave.
yeah, the Lovelock Caves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had an interview with someone did a lot of research on that, so he's going to be on here. Like we already recorded it, so it should be coming out here in a couple weeks. But,
No, we have a local history of the giants of the Ohio and Tennessee Valley. Kind of a typical one of battling with the Native Americans of similar stories you've heard elsewhere where they were kind of coming in stealing livestock and then started, stealing animals and stuff. There's a Old Stone Fort, which is it's in the same county I am, but supposedly that's why the Native Americans chose that spot too, was not only for its ability to catch the sunlight year round and be able to grow, but it had a natural fort around it so that they could defend it from the giants and from other people as well.
no. That's actually I have another episode coming out too. It's not about giants, but it's about the opposite, the little people.
Oh yeah,
Puckwudgies and stuff like that. But I want to get into a Kentucky Goblin type episode. I talked to someone, one of the first people I interviewed, and he was talking about it was for Bigfoot stuff, but then he mentioned that they were on a walk and they saw something look like a golem, and obviously from the Lord of the Rings, I was like, they were in from Kentucky, Southern Indiana. I was like, that sounds like a Kentucky Goblin.
yeah.
He's like, a what? I was like, oh. What's funny is this picture up here. I know the guy that drew that or whatever. He's a really good artist. It's a Kentucky Goblin. But no,
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, there's all sorts of weird cryptid things that people see, and I've interviewed people with some different. They've seen small humanoids. That's why I said, once you start going down the rabbit holes, what are these people actually seeing? Because I'm not going to say I believe everything that someone tells me, but I believe they believe what they're telling me, if that makes sense.
Sure. Well, they definitely saw something.
Yeah, they saw something. I'm not saying it's 100% what they're saying because, hell, I don't even 100% believe what I saw because it doesn't make any sense. But I believe that they're being honest and telling me what they saw. I don't know if that's exactly what they saw, but I believe that they're being honest about it.
Yeah. And I've heard, I was talking, I think it was an old timer around my area, and I forget what setting it was. I think it just might have been randomly talking. And they said that people way back, because, kind of this whole area from here, North Carolina, Virginia, all over this area, there's a lot of coal miners. And they would claim to have seen what they were calling them black leprechauns, because I guess a lot of them were like of Irish descent or Scottish descent and working in the coal mines. They'd be deep in the mountains and just see these little people covered in soot and coal dust in the deep mines, and just kind of popping out and being, them just kind of tripping out like, what is this? And then it runs off and they can't find it, like different stuff like that. So
yeah, I've always wondered with evolution and stuff like that, what if people offshoots of our ancient relatives, I guess, off branch, they lived in caves, they're going to adapt differently than what we would have. But
yeah. Which, side note, which made that movie The Descent very terrifying for just that.
Yeah. I enjoyed that movie. The second one, I watched it once and I was just like, eh.
Yeah, totally.
But the first one was really good.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I think we can wrap this up unless you got anything else you want to talk about.
No, I'm good, man. I think I just like to throw in bringing it back to Bigfoot and stuff because I'm in the area of where I had my sighting, and because I love to hike and I mushroom forage, I was in that area since I've been back, and I don't, I don't, I don't put much faith in it, but I'm doing it just for what they call shiggles, of having a gifting spot out there where I put some obsidian rocks in this area, and I chose obsidian just because if it's something out of place, you're going to spot it right away if it's in your yard or your house. You know what I mean? Like someone puts a random chair in your house and you walk in, you're going to be like, what is this? So I've tried that. One rock went missing. One is still there, and I haven't been back to check it in quite a while. So I'll have to go do that soon. But over the summer, I went kayaking there, and I drug the kayak about, I don't know, probably a quarter mile or half mile on the trail back. And in the summertime when the water's high, the trail just stops and goes into water, which goes into the Duck River, which goes into a major lake area, or major lake in my area. And I just wanted to explore. And so I just kind of popped the kayak in the water. And this is exactly the spot where I had the sighting when I was a kid. And it goes into a little creek and then it goes into the major rivers. So when it got into the river, I have a choice of going right, which I know goes to the lake, or going left, which goes upriver. And I just wanted to explore the area for my own self, just to see if, how close houses are, accessibility, and to kind of further get familiarized myself with the area of anything happenings or what happened when I was a kid, seeing that. And as I'm kind of sitting there, I may be about, I don't know, 20 yards, give or take, probably a little bit more around that area from the bank. And I'm making my decision. And right as I go to turn to go upriver, I hear this kerplunk, like right beside the kayak. And the only thing, and it's weird as shit because I don't know where to put it again. But to me, I think something threw a rock at me. That's the only thing I can figure out, is that something threw a rock at me, because I was hearing fish jump, which make an entirely different sound. They kind of more make a slappy sound in the water. And turtles were kind of going in, but again, they make a different sound. They hardly make any sound going into the water. And they were more like on logs and stuff like that. So none of that was around. And it was just that deep, kerplunk. And it was like, when I looked, I just saw the ripple and splash of the water, which was maybe about a foot or so from my kayak. And yeah, I just don't know how to explain that. And let's see, and what else? Oh, in another area that's maybe a few miles from that, but in the same general kind of area, because where that river runs into the lake, there's another spot on the other side that my friend and I were doing some night hikes on, and we heard a wood knock one night, and that was New Year's night. We heard a wood knock, and the second time was more about late fall, and she's not a believer, or not a skeptic, but not a believer either, and doesn't know much about it. But we were walking and doing a night hike. It's dark, and then we hear just straight up like a tree fall, like a tree break, and then it just crashing. No wind or anything. And so she kind of freaks out. It's like, let's just go back now. And I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. So we start going back and on the trail, and we're walking. We come around the bend, and this is kind of dark, and it sounds like something, or first, so as we turn around and coming back, we hear something jump up and bound away, and then stop. And she's like, oh my God, what was that? And then it starts snorting. And I'm like, oh, that's definitely a deer. Male deer do that. We probably just walked up on it, or it was kind of close, and, we scared it. And it was definitely a deer. It bounded. You could hear it bound. And And then we go around the trail up a little further, and it sounds like something just like stood up and started walking. And she again like jumps beside me and grabs a hold of me and is like, "What is that?" And I say, "Oh, I was like, "Oh, that's a deer," because remember we just came across one around the corner there. Like, it's a deer again. And from her own experience, she goes, "No, that's on 2 feet and it sounds heavy. It sounds loud." And and then all of a sudden I was like, And so we're walking, and when we stop, I just kind of like grab her and we just stop, and it kind of takes a couple of steps, and then it stops. And as we start walking, it starts walking again. And didn't see anything, didn't see any eye shine, but yeah, it was just something that happened in a nearby area too that was just kind of really odd that can't explain. And I make it valid because my friend experienced it and she's not really into the subject, and to have her reaction and to hear what she said was kind of important, where I was like, okay, wow, this isn't just kind of me and going, like I said earlier, not just hearing a random thing and thinking it's Bigfoot. That was her own words of like, no, that was something big. And when we got to the car, she said that she thought it was like a homeless person or somebody just kind of hanging out in the woods waiting to like mug us or rob us or something. That was just her thought. She didn't know, but just something really odd. Well, those are kind of my odd experiences that happened kind of fairly recently here. So basically just weird shit happens out there, man, when you're out in the woods. There's no other way to explain it.
The woods are a scary place sometimes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Brandon, your experience is what formed your podcast, right? That's what you're saying. You had your encounter with what you think might be a dog man, or something of the sort, and that's kind of what cemented your podcast. So, and it kind of sounds like it keeps you deep, like diving deep into the subject matter. At least listening to people's stories and talking to them because you got a podcast. So
no, it keeps me involved. Like I said, I don't do the music stuff like I used to. That was always my hobby. So now I've just been doing the podcast, and I feel like if people enjoy what I'm doing, it might be therapeutic for them to listen, even if they don't want to share. They can listen to other people's experiences and maybe feel like me, like where they don't feel so crazy about it. So, and if anyone wanted to share, they can always come on the show and share their experience with me. I mean, I don't judge. I'm not here to prove or disprove. So I'm just giving a platform for anyone.
Yeah.
Do you have an email? How can people get a hold of you?
There are two ways. They can go to tinfoiltales.com, and there's a contact section on there, which basically sends it directly to my email, which the email is tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com. Either way, it's going to go to the email, so they can either just go to the website or go just email me directly. But there's also, it's on social. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, so they can also message me on that way as well.
Perfect. That was my next question. And what are you on any specific platforms or all platforms?
The podcast is available on all of the streaming platforms, so Apple, Spotify, whatever podcatcher is out there. I'm pretty sure they're available on all that. And there's also a YouTube channel. Now, currently, the YouTube channel is just a static image with the audio. My hosting services uploads the video, so I don't really use the video. Like, they just take the artwork from each episode and they post it on there. They just have the audio posted. So, like, I don't do anything with the videos. My hosting service makes it, so makes my life a little bit easier. But no, so anywhere where you can listen to podcasts, Tinfoil Tales should be on there. The only other thing is to make sure it's the correct Tinfoil Tales. That was the other thing that kind of sucked. I started about when I actually published the first episode. It was 3 months after someone else had came out with Tinfoil Tales, but they're from Australia, and theirs is more about the Australian government and the cookers and stuff they got. Like, basically, I consider that their version of meth heads or something out in the Australian outback. So there's some weird movement going on out there, and their tinfoil tails, the artwork is literally tinfoil tails and a blood drippy logo with a tinfoil hat on top of it. Like, you look for my podcast, you're going to see like an alien with some Bigfoot things and a werewolf and some other things in the background. Like, mine's definitely different than theirs. So
Nice.
All right.
And I was going to
Right.
ask,
Well-
I was going to ask one last question, or a two-parter. Was that Dogman experience your initial kind of exposure and going into the paranormal and cryptid stuff, where that kind of kicked it off, or were you kind of just heard stuff and iffy on it to start with? And have you gone back to that area and gone back to that road to kind of mess around and explore or see anything?
the road's only a few miles away, so I actually drive down that road quite a bit.
Oh.
Yeah, I still live like a few miles from it.
Oh, okay.
And so, like I said, I've never seen anything strange again. They ended up putting an alpaca farm just on the same road, right in the same area. Now there's an alpaca farm. I was like, I wonder if it was just an alpaca I'd seen. That doesn't make any sense because clearly it wasn't an alpaca either. But no, apparently, and I didn't know this until I started doing the podcast, but I had some experiences prior that could be considered paranormal, but I can't say one way or the other if they were or not. And I was always a fan of the X-Files. That's why I got my little I want to believe in the
Yeah.
background. And so I was always fascinated by stuff like that, but I never took it seriously. But what happened definitely changed my perspective on what I thought I knew. So, like I said, since I've done this podcast, and I've become a lot more open-minded, I guess. I'm not going to say that I believe everything, but I'm not going to write everything off either.
Sure. Cool.
But for anyone on my podcast listening, you guys want to let the audience know where they can find you guys at?
Yeah, you can find Bigfoot and the Citizen Scientist podcast on Spotify or any of your podcatchers. Any streaming service is available. The Squatchologist podcast. I'm sorry, and Bigfoot and the Citizen Scientist podcast. We also have a YouTube channel, and the Squatchologist podcast is mainly YouTube for all our video stuff, but we do post up updates and whatnot on our podcast, the Squatchologist podcast, in audio form only on the same streaming platforms that you can find Bigfoot and the Citizen Scientist podcast.
Nice.
Yeah.
So pretty much wherever you find Tinfoil Tales, you can find your show too. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, guys.
Well, yeah, perfect. Did you have any final, anything last you wanted to say for this, our section?
No, that's about good on my end again.
Cool.
I don't really have a whole lot to say that I haven't already said on some other things, and I don't enjoy talking about myself too much. So like if someone asks me about what happened, I'll just talk about it or whatever. But for like my show or whatever, I just want to make sure it's dedicated to the experiencers out there, not me toot my own horn. So, but no, for your show, anyone wants to check it out, they can just find it on whatever streaming platform. If they have a story they'd like to share or an experience, can't call them stories because that offends people. Sounds like you're discrediting them. So I've been trying to say experiences more. So anyone that has an experience they want to share, they can just reach out to me and we'll get something scheduled.
Cool.
But I appreciate you guys coming on here and talking with me tonight. It's been my pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks for having.
Absolutely. Yeah, we appreciated it. We appreciate it a whole bunch, Brandon. You're awesome, man.
Yeah, thank you. We're gonna wrap this one up. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for listening. Remember, the truth lies in the stories we share, the connections we make. Stay curious, stay open-minded. Thank you all for joining us on this journey, and until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep exploring the unknown. Good night, everyone.